second to go for the win. He got it. The Cougars win it. Number one remains number one. Cougars reset. Jackson again finds it. And the Houston Cougars go from the first floor out to the Sweet 16.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby.
Yes! Welcome to the Scott Holland Podcast, back here during the spring sports season, but with plenty of off-season stuff to talk about as well. It never truly ceases being football and men's basketball season. Football as a school in Texas, and men's basketball is a program that has proven itself to be quite good over the past 7 or 8 years under Kelvin Sampson. Blessing in that regard. Bobby, the birds are all out. Frankly, I didn't even go through the spring metaphors because it's probably, I just haven't looked. I'm assuming it's been just hot as all get out where you're at. Is spring in only the most theoretical sense of the word? How you doing, friend?
Buddy, actually we've had really nice weather. Today was kind of warm, right? It got up to like the mid 80s, but we've been having like 50s at night and 76, 77 during the day. So actually kind of spring here in Dallas. It's nice. I actually got plans to play 18 tomorrow, so it should be a good time.
Look at that. As the kids say, love that for you there, pal. And what I also love that for us and those of you who listen who are Charlie Hustle consumers, our good friends in Kansas City. Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. On the World Wide Web, vintage made fresh, makers of incredibly comfortable vintage collegiate wearables, including a very nice collection of your Houston Cougars. So many deals they got going on there, honestly, that can't even get to all of them, but chances are if it's a day ending in Y, Charlie Hustle has some kind of special going on that at least in some way includes their fantastic Cougar collection. Of course, the deal that works for all days and seasons is using our promo code PAW15, like podcast, PAW15 at checkout. You're going to save 15% off your order of fantastic Charlie Hustle wearables. Just because the weather's getting warmer doesn't mean there isn't Charlie Hustle gear repping your Cougars, repping all the Big 12 for the season as well. So that's Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. Of course, don't forget to go over to Patreon, patreon.com/SHPAWDcast. If you like what you do, if you want to put just a little bit of modest sum of money behind it monthly, we'd be very appreciated. To phrase the time and effort that goes into putting a weekly Houston Cougar sports podcast out there into the ether.
Look,
so
we'll take non-modest amounts of money.
We'll take non-modest as well. I'm, exactly. If you like,
I don't want to. Let's not only encourage modest. I'm not begging for that, right? I'm here for the modest amounts too. But if you want to throw a non-modest amount at us, we'll be all ears.
I'm begging for the non-modest specific amounts out of just I believe percentage-wise who's listening. I'm not impugning or complimenting. I'm just being completely neutral at the economic stats of anyone listening. But just statistically, stands to reason you don't have $75,000 burning your pocket. But if you think that describes you, please get in contact with us. Go to patreon.com/. Well, frankly, if you got that much money burning in your pocket, I'm gonna read Bobby's cell phone number off here on air. I'm just kidding, Bobby.
Yeah.
But if you got that much money in your pocket, shpodcast@gmail.com. We will get a meeting set up ASAP with you. But if you are among those of us who don't have $75,000 burning a hole in your pocket, patreon.com/shpodcast. So like we talked about before we got on air, there's 30 seconds of me and Bobby talking that the world will never see the live day that were recorded here on our new streaming platform. But it's not the best news episode. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I think you kind of earn your keep doing what we do by not just being like, good news is happening this week, we're recording. Some of the news this week isn't the best, we're just gonna skip out on that. So can't necessarily do that. So I think we're starting with the positive news though, in that Houston Cougar men's basketball. I think the positive news here, I think the bigger positive news, not that the player we're about to talk about isn't big news in himself, is that not much movement to talk about. Basically, your one departure, Jamal Shead, was one you very much expected and quite reasonably, believed would be happening after the conclusion of the season. A conclusion that was earlier than I think we all wanted, but no fault of anyone other than just a freak thing with Jamal Shead's ankle. So it's really good in an era where player movement is just, it's never been more ubiquitous. I think that's the good overall news, Bobby. This is going to, in no uncertain terms, look like largely the same roster that was here last year. Something that I think we probably would have taken for granted years and years ago. but now is exceedingly rare. So I think that's the other good news. But the more specific good news is that we got our first roster addition from the portal in the form of Milos Uzan, who played his first 2 collegiate seasons for Oklahoma. Bobby, I want to start by asking you a question.
Okay.
Assuming Milos Uzan is UH's starting point guard next year, not a guarantee, but pretty likely scenario, what does a successful first season for him in this program look like to you? Just as general, as specific as you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect him to be Jamal Shed, right? He comes in coming off 9 points a game, I believe, this past year. Doesn't exactly light up the world. You kind of see a stat line and you're not like, oh my God, this is going to be the guy who absolutely takes us to the next level. But he comes in as a sophomore, 4-star recruit. He'll be coming in as a junior. I'm sorry. He'll be coming in as a junior. Took a small step up from his freshman to sophomore year. Started in the Big 12 as a freshman. That's a huge deal. I don't know if I expect him to just come in and just light up the scoreboard. I just want to see him be that defender that we need to just kind of go to the next level to shut everyone down, right? Look, is he going to be Jamal Shed level? No. Asking somebody to be Jamal Shed level defender is a lot, even if they come in with defending bona fides, right? But for me, there's enough talent coming back that I just need him to handle the ball, no turnovers, not no turnovers, right? Because you're going to have them, but keep the turnovers in check, but just make sure that you're the guy who's feeding Cryer, Sharp, and Wani. Right. I just need him to come in and be a distributor more than I need him to be this game-changing scorer or anything like that.
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well there. And, I mean, I think the first thing you said is the 9 points per game, and the shooting numbers really don't jump off the page at you, but
they don't excite you.
No, they don't excite you. But I think you have to look at his first year's Oklahoma, and one that I think that he was able to get on the court for a Division I Big 12 program in his first year. I'd say that's a positive. And consider also that he is not going to be asked to do the same things that he was asked to do in the Oklahoma Sooner program. Like, he is going to be asked to be a distributor. Like you said, setting up guys like Cryer and like Sharp, even getting your big men involved, JoJo Tugler when he's on the floor as well. Like, really making the guys around him better. I think what really stood out to me is, and we're not privy to U of H's entire board of top transfer targets, and just guessing that list probably wasn't solely Milos Uzan, but this was a guy that was on a very short list for the U of H coaching staff from the word go. He was a guy that we heard connected with, being a portal addition to U of H, basically from the moment he got in the portal, which was, I think, very shortly after the conclusion of the season, or I guess after the conclusion of Oklahoma's season more specifically. So we don't know exactly who the transfer targets were. And again, probably not him solely on the list, but the fact that he was on that very short list from an early part of the offseason, and that it didn't take this staff long to get his commitment. I mean, no coaching staff in human history hits on 100% of the players that they target, but I think the absurdly high hit rate of the staff under Kelvin Sampson, the fact that he was, as I've said a couple times now, clearly a top early target, I think that's enough right there to be really optimistic. And I'm not someone who usually gives just this coaching staff offered, so therefore this guy's a dude. I don't give that benefit of the doubt to very many programs out there, whether they are U of H programs or any collegiate athletic team. I feel like Kelvin Sampson and his staff have earned that when it comes to this young man. And again, not a guarantee. I mean, you have Terrence Arsenault coming, one of the guys who's initially signaled that he will be back for next season, a guy who the staff really liked, had his season cut short against A&M with season-ending injury last season. I think that's a guy who's really promising. And I think it's going to be a situation where you have more than 5 starting caliber guys that either have extensive divisional experience or extensive divisional experience in the U of H program. And that's just a really, really great place to be, because I think it's worth zooming out and just looking at this roster you have coming back, and getting excited about this roster that you have coming back in this really fantastic offseason. I think, Bobby, right now we are living in the most realistic best case scenario for the U of H men's basketball offseason, in a sporting landscape where roster continuity is never been tougher to maintain. Getting back LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp, getting back Jalen Robertson, Javier Francis, getting back Terrence Arceneaux and JoJo Tugler, bringing in 2 4-star top 100 national recruit freshmen, Chase McCarty and Mercy Miller, and adding Uzan to that, then that's really exciting. Like, I think that's why U of H is number one in a lot of people's way too early preseason top 10 or top 25. That's why Cougar fans, I think, should be very excited about the team that's coming back. And I don't feel like I've seen many people who aren't, but it bears repeating it. And I think the staff definitely got a guy who they coveted was on their very short list of players to replace a guy who I think the most true thing you said is that Jamal Shead is irreplaceable. You were not getting Jamal Shead production from anyone out there, theoretically or otherwise, that could have joined the Cougars. But yeah, I like some of the things I've seen, and I take this staff's focus on this young man as a big endorsement.
Yeah, for me, the biggest piece of recruiting that the staff did was keeping who they kept on the roster.
Yep.
I mean, if I would have told you your recruiting class was Wani, LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, Javier Francis, and Terrence Arceneaux, you'd be like, all right, yeah, no. Then that's basically what the staff did. They kept the core together. You lost a big piece of that core, but you kind of replaced them as best you could. And to your point that this was one of the top targets for this team, there were probably others that they wanted, but he was first on campus that we saw. He was the first one to really get this idea that U of H was searching for the point guard. And, we all had an idea we wanted to replace a point guard, but he was the first name we really heard about, the first name that was on campus. And to the point, they said as soon as he stepped foot on campus, it was a done deal. So that's really exciting. Just one more quick little thought on the basketball team before we move on or anything like that. One thing I am interested in, according to our scholarship tracker, we're over the limit right now. So it's going to be really interesting to see if somebody is classified as a walk-on. Does somebody get NIL money? Does somebody pay their own way through NIL money? Kind of going to be interesting to see how the coaching staff and the athletic department kind of manages its way through that.
Yeah, absurdly deep roster. Like,
yeah,
I think we've a couple different times. Gloom and Dustin was with us, like, talked about it. Like, you could make a case for, they won't go 12 or 13 deep because no one goes 12 or 13 deep in college with a rotation, but you can make a really strong case for a 10 or 11 man rotation where, like, either a good incoming player or a promising bench guy is a part of that 10, 11 man rotation. So yeah, really, really exciting stuff. I put this last because it's clearly the least important. Is very stupid on my part, Bobby, but I still want to say it. Clearly my influence is the one U of H alum living in Las Vegas, although again, if someone out there actually lives here, if you are listening and you know somebody that is a U of H alum or fan that lives in Vegas, get in contact with us, shpodcast@gmail.com. But
he'd love a friend to watch the games with.
Honest, man, it is weird to be like in a major city and be like, I might be the only one that like lives here permanently that went to / is a U of H fan. Clearly, though, as the one U of H Las Vegas fan out there, Bobby, I am influencing things on a vast scale because there's a good chance that next year our starting quarterback and point guard Donovan Smith and Milos Uzan, respectively, are Las Vegas prep guys. Smith played his first 3 years at Bishop Gorman, the big national power Catholic school here, and Milos Uzan played for Shadow Ridge, which is it's a big public school on the north side. So it has to be at Bobby, right? It has to be
the Sam effect, baby. The same effect.
The same effect in full effect. Clearly, that's what's happening here. Nothing with those programs. It's got to be that. Bobby, I want to transition to football here.
Yeah, let's do it, bud.
So we've seen a number of players enter the portal immediately following the conclusion of spring practice in the past couple weeks. Not unusual, this window to see a number of guys enter the portal. It's kind of the quote unquote second window of the football transfer portal. So I just wanted to kind of throw it to you here. Since the end of spring ball, since this group of a dozen plus guys has gone in there, what are the names that stood out to you, and what are your kind of general thoughts about this happening? Are you in any kind of panic mode, or is this kind of more along the lines of what you expected to happen at some point during this football offseason, the first football offseason under new head coach Willie Frirz?
Yeah, so for me, we were actually talking in our group text with Pawd podcast artist Bill, a friend of the show, Bill, about this, because he's not somebody who follows. He definitely follows the
Yeah, a valid
program
question.
closely, but yeah, he was like, "Are we worried about this at all?" Right? And for me, I know that I'm probably in the minority in this. I couldn't be less panicked about this if I tried. Like, look, is are we a better team if we have Samuel Brown on the roster? Yeah, probably. Right? Just from an absolute pure talent, yeah, probably Samuel Brown probably is he not probably he is a really good football player, and you don't love losing guys like that. But we're gonna have we're going to have a new offense. We're going to have a bunch of players coming and going. It happens with staffs all the time. And I just have this belief that one of the best recruiting jobs that Fritz did was getting as many of these guys to stay through spring ball that he did, right? The fact that the fact these guys saw at least enough to say, I'll give spring a go, right? Because is it maybe better to transfer at the first portal deadline? Yeah, probably, right? Because then you can go in and you can play spring ball at your new school and start getting reps there. But he did enough recruiting of these guys to stay through spring, and so I can really respect that. And then I don't know what this offense is going to look like, but you know who does, Sam? Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz knows what
I
this
hope so.
offense
I
is gonna look
really hope so.
and he knows the guys that are going to fit in his system and the guys that aren't. And to be honest with you, I don't know how Samuel Brown's going to fit into that system, right? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe we want more of a different type of player. We're looking for tall, big guys to go across the middle in a West Coast style offense or something like that. Like, I don't know. And so I have this full faith in trust that if they transferred out, they probably had a discussion with Willie Fritz that was, or their coordinator or their position coach that was like, look, you're not going to get the touches here. You don't fit the system we're running. And while I think you're a good football player, I want to make sure that you're getting your right time. It's just not a fit anymore. The previous administration was here. You were a great fit for them. You're just not a great fit for my offense.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not, we're not, I guess, privy to exactly every conversation that happens with all these guys, and we're not gonna pretend to be. For me, looking at all the guys that have transferred since the end of spring practice, I think you could put them in three imperfect tiers of players, just simply based on what they have done previously in their U of H careers. So, want to note, because these things can be very fluid. We're recording this on Wednesday, April 24th. So who knows, man? Maybe something big breaks after we record this. I just want to make it noted the exact point in time this is happening, in case someone's like, oh, this happened afterwards. And it's like, buddy, I cannot predict what the portal has wrought on all of our lives. But, and again,
you don't know what 18 to 23-year-olds are going to do.
I know, crazy, really terrible. I can't forecast that. But, and again, these 3-ish tiers are in no way forward facing of what these guys could end up doing it wherever they end up next, or if they return to U of H, because that can happen. It actually happened twice in the winter transfer portal, guys who initially entered the portal and then decided to return to the UH program, Isaiah Hamilton and Justin Benton. Again, at least as of recording. Again, these things can always quite often change. So Sam Brown, who you mentioned specifically, he's kind of in his own tier and kind of the tier one, the standout starter, possible all-conference player tier. I really don't think any of the 15 guys that have entered since spring ball fit that descriptor like Samuel Brown. You also have guys who are either, returning starters or were at least heavily used rotation players. The three guys I would give that classification to are Jalen Emery. I think he's the most recent portal entry. Defensive back, linebacker Traylon Payne, and interior defensive lineman Akeem Ajijalaya. It's three guys there. And Joshua Cobbs, a receiver, is kind of in between that tier I just said, the returning starter rotation player tier, and the tier of guys who played pretty minimal game action that I'm going to mention here in a second, because in his 1 year at U of H, he had 8 receptions and probably played in too many snaps to be just called a backup, but also didn't play enough that I would call him a returning starter, give him that classification. And then the remaining 10 guys, Brian Henry, Logan Compton, Michael Harrison Pilot, CJ Nelson, Tevin Shaw, Lucas Coley, Michael Patterson, Justice Ugo, Jalen Stanford, and Aubrey Smith, I would say are all in that third tier of guys, backups or guys who saw minimal or no meaningful game action. Again, I'm not saying any of those 10 or 11 guys who were in the portal from this most recent group and didn't play that much over their U of H careers can't go to another program and excel. I think that those guys are why the portal, I think, is a net good, if not a 100% perfect vehicle for allowing college athletes to find a program where they can play a bigger role or get a fresh start. I mean, these guys are the kind of transfers that happen nowadays, even when there hasn't been a coaching change. You genuinely see guys who maybe don't see a path to get into the starting lineup or even breaking into the two deep, go find a program where they can, because you only have one college career. So, I mean, I don't think I've seen a really meaningful number of U of H fans panicking. And I think you can acknowledge that there's no reason to panic, which I think kind of genuinely describes how you and I feel to different degrees. But you still wish U of H had the services of guys like Sam Brown, Michael Harrison Pilot, or Traylon Payne in the future. This is just the kind of thing that happens when you make a coaching change from a program where things weren't going 100% well. It would have happened if you hired any of the other candidates U of H had on its shortlist to replace Holgorsen, not named Willie Fritz. It's obviously happening now under Willie Fritz. And I guess my only other thought is this, Bobby. You could feel any kind of way you want to feel about this as a fan, but the vast majority of this group of players electing to find a new school, these guys didn't play that much in their U of H careers prior to now and may not have genuinely seen a clear path for that to change in the coming seasons. No reason, I think, to keep those guys from finding somewhere to get on the field. That's not to say, again, none of those guys could have stuck around here and potentially worked their way into being a starter or all-conference guy in the future. But my tiers of guys, I want to repeat, were not forward-facing. But I don't know. Your mileage may vary. That's just me. I'm not saying everything is fine and dandy with the sport in particular. I think it kind of sucks if you're a G5 school, because really when you're in that school's position, you can consider yourself lucky if you're holding on to like a third or fourth of your all-conference guys, the way the bigger name programs now just like pick those programs apart for their all-conference level players. And I also don't think, I think you and I had this conversation the other day. I don't think, with some exceptions, I'm sure, that guys going to like 4 schools in a 5-year college career is really great for anyone, whether that's the schools or, so it's a pain in the butt as two people who somehow, some way got college degrees. It's kind of a pain to make sure you check all the boxes to get a college degree, to do all that while playing a high intensity sport that demands almost all of your time, and also make sure you're on track to graduate. Like, if you're changing schools almost every year, it's fucking impossible. Like, there's just no way to do it. Differing schools' academic requirements, keeping on top of transcripts, just like a number of ways that make it a nightmare. I don't think is great, but I think the real failure was 4 or 5 years ago from the sports governing body, when they didn't start thinking about gradual and sensible change instead of just fighting tooth and nail until the very end, and then just holding up their hands and letting transferring become this unregulated wild, wild west kind of thing, instead of thinking, okay, how can we blend the old rules and the new rules into something that's not just a nightmare for all concerned. Even the bluest of the blue bloods that benefit the most from this, it's still a situation where coaches are having to constantly re-recruit their rosters, and just recruiting is becoming this 12-month calendar kind of thing, So I think we should also remind ourselves the portal's 2 ways. I doubt the staff's done adding transfers. Could be wrong, not based on insider information, but just historic precedent. Go last season, Bobby, the Holgorsen staff added 6 transfers after spring practice. Given the volume of exits, I think it's pretty safe to say, right, that we're probably not seeing U of H get done adding players.
Yeah, no, there's no way the staff is done adding players. I think for me, just to kind of talk about some of the points you brought up, I think I agree wholeheartedly with this idea that you are re-recruiting your team every year, right? Just to try and make sure that they stay and they're not out there chasing different things, whatever they want to chase. And those guys that do transfer 4 times in 5 years, yeah, it's not probably great for their development as a football player, or just kind of as a human. When you got to change it that much, it causes a lot of turmoil. So, do I think it's perfect? No. Do I think it's better than making guys sit out a year and only letting them transfer once and it being this whole penal thing? Yeah, I think if coaches can move as freely as they want to, I think the players should as well. So, I think overall, moving away from big picture and talking UH football here, I think for me, I don't have any panic with losing these players. even to your point, Sam, that I'm not worried, that they could be productive in the future, things like that. I just have to trust that our staffs went and had conversations with these guys and said, you know, it, you need PT and it ain't going to come here. Michael Harrison Pilot, for instance, that's a guy who just seemed like he was built for the Holgorsen staff. And no matter what offense Willie Fritz ran, it just doesn't seem like he's a fit for any system that Fritz has ever run. Same with Lucas Coley, right? I was excited for Lucas Coley when he got brought in. Thought he was going to have a chance to compete against Donovan Smith. I think if you go back and listen to our preseason last year, I was like, Coley may beat him. Am I disappointed that Lucas Coley's leaving? Yeah, but I'm not shocked by it. Lucas Coley was probably leaving no matter what, no matter the coach that was in charge here. Whether it's the previous administration or it's Willie Fritz. He was definitely going to be gone when they brought in another transfer quarterback, which I think everyone expected this team to bring in a transfer quarterback in the portal. I think Donovan Smith was good last year. I don't think he was great, and he probably needed a little bit of competition. And Lucas Coley is the odd man out there. One thing that I did find interesting about the releases or the announcements that the players made, you could tell when they had certain position group meetings. And I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but one day it was like 4 wide receivers were in, and then the next day it was like 3 linemen were in the portal, and it's like, oh, discussions were had. Got it. Okay, this is the day that we did our meetings, that kind of stuff. So just something that I've kind of found funny. You could see it. You saw the specialist, right? Didn't we have a kicker and a long snapper or something like that? I think we had a long snapper.
I just realized I didn't include the long snapper.
Yeah, I think we had a long snapper who.
Yeah, we definitely did. I don't know about the kicker. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but we definitely had a long snapper.
You could just see that positional meetings were happening, and I just kind of found that a little funny. That you could clearly tell that there were meetings, and it was like, yeah, you're not going to be that guy here, kind of deal. So, yeah, I think Bill made fun of me too because of how just chill I was about this. I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, this is going to happen with any coaching change. The fact that it's happening in spring, would it be better if it happened when he first came in and there were how many guys are in the portal? Let me do the math. 15, right?
Just from the most recent, from
14,
since spring
15?
ball, yes, but give me a second on the.
Well, your list is 14,
number.
And we forgot the your list was. I'm just talking about post.
I went off full transparency. I went off the 247 has a portal thing where you
so it's like 14 or 15 is pretty close.
Yeah.
Would it have been better if you split that 8 and 7? No, you're still losing 15 guys, right? It doesn't matter when they're transferring out. So if we all expected this roster to turn over with Willie Fritz, it's going to happen anywhere, anytime when there's a major coaching change like we just saw. So yeah, I'm not shocked. I'm not worried or anything like that about this roster.
Yeah, I'm sure the answer would be no. I would challenge anyone who's panicking to be asking, like, would you, if I went back 5-6 months back during the football season that everyone was pretty unhappy about and said, would you keep around Dana for a little bit less roster stability? To a person, everyone would be like, no.
Everyone would have said no.
Get rid of this guy. Like, obviously hope the roster turnover isn't too bad, but like we need a new coach regardless of what happens. Well, you got a new coach. He was your 1A or number 1 choice. The roster turnover that I think happens anywhere, anytime this coaching change is happening. Obviously, we'll see what effect that has on the season to come, but I think you can make a pretty good case that, and I'm not falling the trap of just like, oh, the reason they're leaving is because they weren't playing here and stuff like that. Like, I can't project what those guys' college career is going to do, and not going to say every departure was, oh, it was Willie Fritz is just getting his guys in there. Like, it's never that simple. And the people who are the loudest saying that usually are the ones that know the least about it. So make clear I'm not saying that, but I will just point out, if you just look at their U of H career, the majority of the guys that are leaving after spring ball weren't playing a big role. Not all of them, but definitely the majority.
Yep.
All right, Bob, you want to go to the links and talk some Cougar golf programs at their respective Big 12 championships?
Of course, let's get this going. So I am going to start with women's golf because we got some good news about women's golf today. But the Big 12 championships took place last week in Hockley, Texas, and the Cougs were near the top of the scoreboard. We were texting about this. Top of the scoreboard for the first 2 days. Super excited. In fact, Sam sent me a text and said, "I'm really glad that we've been able to separate ourselves from the second tier on the scoreboard." And I said, not only that, 7, because I think it was 7 strokes. And I said, 7 strokes is not unattainable. We could easily fall back. But also, we're only back 5 from the lead. We could also win this thing still. And we were both pretty excited. So we were both kind of going, kind of looking ahead and getting excited. And unfortunately, we totally jinxed it. And we got humbled when the Cougs shot a just bad 14 over to drop from second place all the way down to 6th. Just for reference, so people understand how bad of a round this was, the best round on day 3, which was the day we shot 14 over, the final day of the tournament, the best round was 3 under by Texas Tech. They beat us by 17 strokes. That's a lot of strokes, guys. And that 17-stroke swing took Tech from down to us to actually beating us by 3 strokes. That's how far ahead we were. We were so far ahead that they had a 17-stroke swing, and it ended up with the Cougs finishing in 6th. Really wanted a podium there. Or I'm sorry, we call it a medalist in golf.
Top 3 finish.
Yeah, top 3 finish there. We were really hoping for one of those, but it wasn't all bad. Milos Uzan gave U of H a beautiful tied for 5th, 1 under performance, which obviously is very exciting to have a golfer finish in the top 5 in this new conference. And the good news that I talked about coming off that performance, the Cougs found out earlier today, the 24th. So we are recording this on April 24th. They found out today that they did, in fact, make the NCAA postseason, which is very exciting. And they are the 7th seed in the Auburn Regional. So they are headed to Auburn to play in that regional down there. So really exciting stuff for the Lady Cougars. The top, just so everyone knows, the top 4 teams in that regional advance to the NCAA championships in Carlsbad. So the Cougs could, they have the talent and the ability to make and finish in the top 4. The problem's going to be there are other teams that are very talented. It's going to require a little bit of some upsets here in terms of their their finishing spot. So if they can finish top 4 there, they will advance to the NCAA championships in Carlsbad, and that will be the first time the Cougs have ever made the NCAA championships as a women's golf team. So really hoping that the Cougs can come through next week when it comes to this the NCAA postseason. And then Sam, all year I have complained about how terrible getting rid of Golf Step was and bringing in Spike Mark. And
I know where you're going with this.
We got to use Spike Mark for the Big 12 championship, which was great.
Golf Step.
Or not, I'm sorry, not Spike Mark.
Yeah, we hate Spike Mark. Spike Mark still is a bad golf scoring program in our book.
So Sam, golf stats rankings went away this year because they were going to use Spike Mark. So let me tell you how the selection committee selected their at-large bids and signed their regional seating this year. So this is a direct quote from the Golf Channel website, NBCsports.com/golf. Okay. I went to their just to preview, figure out what was going on. I went to their bracketology, basically, right? And this is the paragraph about how they're selecting their committees, or how the committee's selecting their at-large teams. It could be different this year. With Golf Stats ranking no longer available, the committee's main resource is Mark Brody's National Collegiate Golf Ranking. Now, Mark Brody is like the god of golf stats. He created Spike Mark. It's a whole thing. But Mark Brody is that guy. Like, he's the guy who brought
He's like the Ken
analytics to
Palm of
golf.
college golf.
Yes. Like, we do not hate Mark Brody.
We don't hate
Okay?
Mark Brody.
The committee's main resource is Mark Brody's National Collegiate Golf Ranking. The NCAA's Competition Oversight Committee did update selection criteria for the season only, allowing the golf committees to use other established ranking systems in addition to Brody's rankings. Remember, we don't have a golf stat ranking anymore. So what else are they going to use? However, the Golf Week Sagarin, how do you pronounce that?
Sagarin?
Sagarin, yep, ranking is also no longer published. So it's unknown if any other ranking is established enough to be considered. Okay? So we're using this we have no way to rank teams right now, is basically what we're saying. Golf Channel has learned that the teams have been asked to send in brag sheets or resumes to further assist the committee. Sam, this is a Division I sports program. Like, it's a what is happening? They have to, like, send in their, like, hey, we think we did pretty good here. You should consider us for the NCAA tournament. Imagine if the NCAA basketball tournament was like, hey, we have no way to rank the teams. RPI doesn't exist. Like, the net ranking doesn't exist. Nothing exists. We can't use anything. We told everybody to quit making a ranking. We were going to use this ranking, but it's not working in time. Hey, guys, could you send us, like, some of your good wins? Like, what are we doing, Sam? What are we doing? The NCAA is an absolute joke. Like, what are we doing? You wonder why, like, oh, college football is coming up with a system where they're going to break apart and everything's falling apart under the NCAA's watch. They don't have a way to rank teams in one of their sports. What is happening right now, Sam?
I mean, these are the same people who, when the crazy occurrence of rain in the late spring and early summer in the South forced U of H to basically have their season end because they couldn't get enough. They couldn't figure out how to get golf in a part of the world part of the country that's one of the rainiest, like in Louisiana. They didn't have any kind of backup plan for it raining in Louisiana. So U of H had their season end without hitting a single ball in 2021. So it is every bit as stupid and baffling and bizarre and kind of unbelievable as you said. But in that way, it's almost not surprising either. It's just like, and then I remember when U of A, to go back to another thing during that athletics year that really got my goat, or around that general period of time when U of H women's soccer missed the NCAA postseason, despite having just an incredibly worthy resume of being an at-large that season. The committee head that year was just like, yeah, we just used RPI. And it's just like, what are you here for if you're just like,
I can rank teams 1 through 65 using RPI.
You could have a computer program do it and not have to comp like 3 days worth of meals or whatever those assholes do when they get on committees and stuff. Anyway, that another thing, but like, I appreciate that knowledge, even though it makes me feel no better about the sport.
So let me, I kind of jumped to the selection criteria without getting your thoughts on the Cougs in the Big 12 championship and the selection to the NCAA.
Yeah, and I had a few thoughts. I would say 6 out of 13, like, not bad. Like, you don't look at that and it's like, that's, you're in a much tougher league in terms of the opponents and what have you. So on the face of it, not bad. And not in no way am I gonna come back to this and be like, oh, it was really disappointing or something like that. It's still a very young group. I think if you're able to bring all these athletes back for next year, I think 6, I think you can build on that. You could have a top 3 or top 4 finish. It's so painful when, like how you described, you were in striking distance to win the thing.
You were there.
You were there, and to go to that and to hit. I know golf's a fickle game. Like having, like you said before it happened, like having a really bad round is not at all unheard of in the sport. It's a merciless sport in that way. But yeah, that's the kind of like frustrating context of finishing 6 out of 13. Not bad at all, but you knew something better was very much possible. And
you knew a podium was in play.
And I'm glad you mentioned the other round, because it wasn't as if like, oh, well, everyone had a terrible day. I mean, you were 17 strokes worse than Texas Tech. So clearly somebody out there was able to able to play good golf. It wasn't just like you and everyone else were at the mercy of bad conditions, as can sometimes happen in these multi-day events.
Yeah. All right, so let's move over to men's golf. The Cougs traveled this week to Whispering Pines in Trinity, Texas for Big 12 tournament play. The Cougs played well and finished T6. So if you notice anything, the men finished T6, the women finished T6. So, or the women finished straight six. Yeah, they finished sole possession of 6. The Cougs, kind of your measuring stick is, for me this year in pretty much every sport, is how did we do compared to the other 3 newcomers?
Yep.
And Cougar Golf beat all 3 newcomers on the men's side, their fellow newcomers, and actually beat them pretty handily. So I feel pretty good about that as a program. Again, you finished 6th. Are you super excited about it? Not necessarily, but that's kind of what I've been looking for. And heading into the tournament, 6th kind of felt like a realistic goal, right? I didn't have expectations that this team was going to come out and win the Big 12 championship or even finish top 2 or something like that. 6th feels about like what I expected it to be. So pretty good there. But the exciting part was we got the top three UH finishers all placed within the top 15, with Santiago de la Fuente finishing T4. Also want to shout out Wolfgang Glau for a 13th place finish and Austin Riley finishing T15. We don't know if the Cougs will be playing postseason golf. If I had to guess, they're probably a bubble team. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did make it, kind of deal. Probably around a 9-10 seed, something like that, if I had to guess. I really hope it's not the end of the road for the Cougs. That would be really disappointing. But I would imagine De La Fuente is probably going to get an invite as an individual, no
definitely.
matter what. So I don't know if the team will make it, but I would imagine Santiago de la Fuente is probably going to be playing some postseason golf.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I don't have a ton to add on what you said. I think respectable finish. Like,
Yep.
You just generally across the board, sport agnostic, would like to see U of H be closer to the contenders than the people in dead last. You can't get that in every sport, but anytime you're finishing among the more established programs like the Cougars did both on the men's and women's side, I think that's a positive. I think that's something to feel good about. I'm gonna put the positive vibes out there that they do get the team postseason invite as well, along with what I'm sure is going to be a individual invite for Santiago del Fuente in the event that they don't.
All right, Sam. So you said finishing more towards the contenders than the bottom tier. Unfortunately, that means we are going to have to talk about bat and ball sports. Which one do you want to start with, buddy?
Start with baseball. I only have
let's do it.
Yeah, I only have the stomach for like the top line results, and for both of the teams. I mean, you had some details in there, but quite honestly, I don't want to go long on either of these sports because they're just both having very frustrating seasons as of late. You won the series opener 2 weekends ago now against UT. Had an 8-3 lead after losing the Saturday game, pretty close one, but lost it in the series finale. Bobby, you had an 8-3 lead going into the 8th inning, and incredibly. And not the good kind of incredibly, you're pitching allowed 10 runs in the final 2 innings, dropped a home series to the absolutely most gettable Longhorn team on the entire sports conference schedule. Like, you just go top to bottom, all the programs you faced there this year. I mean, hate to give them any kind of shine, won't do it for an extended period of time, but most of them were some degree of quite good. Football's a title contender, volleyball wins the whole thing. You go on down the list. Like, You're usually facing a pretty good. In softball, you took 1 of 3 against them, and as much as things haven't gone right in the softball side, taking 1 of 3 was tremendous. One of the biggest sports wins you got the entire season. Not the case. Like, this UT team is, I feel like, as close to a lock as is out there, will not be in the postseason field. It's having a bad season. Literally, I know midweek baseball is kind of a weird thing to compare, so I'm not trying to say this team's worse than UT Rio Grande Valley, but Bobby, the literal fucking game after us blowing that big lead was them losing for the first time to UTRGV. Like, that's this,
which I will only call Texas Pan American.
They actually, no, that's funny. It's funny you mention that. They actually did lose to them when they were Texas Pan American, but since the rebrand, there's some absurd record against them. So a team that's gettable enough that they lost a midweeker to UTRGV, and you couldn't take 2 of 3 against them. It really, really frustrating. I think maybe even more so dropping 2 of 3 on the road to a Cincy team that you were at one time perpetually above in the standings when you were both in the America, but who is now multiple games ahead of you, has a first-year head coach who was successful at a lower level leading their program. And I try to be calm and professional doing this pod, but it should deeply embarrass U of H's athletic leadership and baseball program leadership that Cincinnati, a program with one NCAA appearance in the last 50 seasons, Bobby, one winning season in the last 10, clearly cares more about their program winning in the present than U of H, who extended an expiring contract of a coach who at the time had missed the last 4 tournaments, is about to miss the 5th in a row. I mean, I tried something these last 2 weekends with baseball, Bobby. I wanted to see how much U of H baseball I organically decided to watch. And buddy, even with the UT series, you know how many innings it was?
3.
0. Like I come on here generally, and I at least will watch some part of all conference games. It's kind of like my end of night thing to do is to go on the ESPN app and kind of catch up on the UH sporting events that I wasn't able to watch live and at least catch meaningful parts of the game. I've watched 0 innings of the last 2 series. Will freely
Well, you
admit
said
it.
meaningful parts of games. What has been meaningful?
I mean, those 10 runs were meaningful, not in a good way. They meaningfully impacted you losing the game. You know what I mean? Like I won't watch all 9 innings, but I'll watch the 4 or 5 where
absolutely
importance have happened. Or if it's like the women's basketball game, I'll watch like the first, and if it's close, like the 3rd and the 4th pivotal points of the game to try to, if I don't watch every second of it, get a good idea of game flow and important things that happen. And Bobby, I love college baseball. I love baseball generally. I'm not saying this team should be contending for the Big 12 title. This is a much better league than the one we came from, but I think we should also be real. This isn't an absolutely stacked league the way it is for like softball. And U of H is, as we record this here on Wednesday night, tied for last in the standings with a BYU team who won their series against U of H, looking pretty likely, not, to heck with being an at-large tournament team, looking likely not even to qualify for the Big 12 tournament. I mean, we'll give the guys credit. We'll end this on as positive as I can. You put up a good fight against the consensus number 1 A&M last night.
And that's the frustrating part.
Yeah,
though.
you see flashes.
You see that 13-11 A&M. You put up 5. Now
had the tying runs on base. Yeah,
and maybe you make the argument that A&M's up so large, right? They're up 10, 11, 12. They're up 13-4 at that point, but like 13-6. So they might have thrown out an arm or something like that. Who's just like, yeah, go out there, burn these innings, and you pick up the 5. But you took the number 1 team 2-9, and they had to think about it. Even if they did throw that arm out and were just like, oh, okay, yeah, let's, they said, let's just go put our inning burner out there. Well, they had to bring somebody in the 8th or the 9th to actually slam that door, or else you were going to beat the number 1 team in the country. But then you go, to your point, to Cincinnati, and you just lay eggs. You just lay eggs against teams that just aren't good. And it feels like it did during football season when I'm like, we got a shot. And I don't want to say this because he's not here, but Dustin was like, after the Baylor game, he was like, we're going to beat this. He's like, we got to play this team and this team. We got a shot at making a bowl. And he's like, Cincinnati's terrible. I was like, buddy, so are we. Like, we're terrible too. Like, let's not, like, I'm not saying that we should just beat Cincinnati, but to your point, we have, like, they're not good. Historically, they're not good. And they just dog walked us, man. They just dog walked us. It's to your point, we're not even going to make the Big 12 tournament. What are we doing? And I got to believe that the reason why we still have a coach who hasn't made the tournament in 5 years now.
Yeah, 5 years, sure. Yeah.
Is he's an incredible fundraiser, man. I don't want to think it that way, but I would venture to say he almost self-funds any improvements that this program makes to their stadium or anything like that. And he's got all the benefit of everything now. He's got the facilities. Now, I went to TCU earlier this year. That stadium is gorgeous. You can see their facilities. It's a nicer stadium than Cougar Baseball Stadium. But here's the thing. They make College World Series. They go to Omaha. I know it's a chicken and egg situation, but we've given the facilities. He's got his baseball specific development program. He's got the field that he wants with the turf and all of that. What else could he possibly need? What else could this program possibly need to take the next step?
Yeah, I mean, it's some like what you pointed out. It is good to remind that that is not a normal not normal in a good way. As in, like a lot your fundraising and the improvements that you've made to this program, you should positively lie at the feet of this head coach. Like that's why I think you give Todd Whitting as long of a leash as you've given him to this point to some degree. It's why you don't, after one or two non-tournament seasons, immediately pull the plug. It's why that, and being a alum of the program. So it's why I give him a long leash. But 5 seasons with probably a 6th or maybe 7th season in the future of not making the tournament is a long time. It is a long historic drought for this program. Like this team on average, Bobby, like I have this stat in my head for an unfinished written piece, but we've made about, I think it's 41% of the seasons this century U of H has made a tournament. Has made the tournament appearance since 2000. Like 5 seasons in a row of not making is a historic dry spell for this program and how successful it's been. And again, it'd be one thing if you're just okay, well, each and every one of these years you're like on the cusp of it. Like it's fine margins, but no, you haven't been above. Like 2019 U of H, I think had a good case for, and I think the committee even said U of H was one of the first handful that were out of the field that did not make it despite having a pretty good resume. Since then, though, you have not been close to the bubble any of these seasons, especially this current one. And that's why it's hard. Like you could kind of the last couple of years before this one point to the fact that okay, like the team wasn't an at-large team, but at least you were good against AAC opponents. I mean, you're tied for dead last. Like the standings can be harsh. The standings can sometimes maybe not tell the full story, but that's ultimately the story. It's binary. It's win-loss, and you have lost far more than you have won this year. And yeah, it's hard to be optimistic. It's not like this is a 1-year thing where you were a really good AAC program and now you've stepped up in weight class. I mean, wasn't a tournament team the last few years? Not going to be a tournament team this year. Not any strong reasons for optimism. It's going to be a tournament year in the seasons to come. Honestly, I hope I'm wrong. I love college baseball. Loved watching this program under this head coach do as well as it's done in the last decade plus. But we're not that program now and haven't been that program for quite a long while. And I think we're deep enough into the season to say that with some real certainty. Bob, you have anything else on baseball before we go to our other bat and ball?
No,
sport?
I'm super excited about our next topic though.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a little less surprising. Cougar softball has gone 0-for in their last 2 weekend series, to home against UCF and last weekend on the road at Oklahoma. Again, opponents that you knew was going to be very tough to get even one win collectively against going into the season. Not going to lie, I'm kind of disappointed how uncompetitive the UCF series was. The Cougars were outscored 27-2 over the 3 games, were run ruled in 2 of those 3 as well. Oklahoma, I mean, that is what it is, man. You knew that'd be a sweep the moment a softball schedule came out.
Absolutely.
For the season. No sense in making any big picture pronouncements from that, but I think it's been kind of a groundhog day last few weeks of this program. Like it just, U of H plays an opponent pretty outmatched. Opponent scores lots of runs. You just don't have remotely enough pitching to deal with the kind of teams the Big 12 offers in softball. And is a very, very good softball league. It doesn't, I think, excuse some of the problems of this program or this team being by pretty wide margin 10th out of 10 in the Big 12 after I think having some recent and not so recent historic success. Like this isn't going against history to ask this program to be better than 10th out of 10, but it's a good softball league and you clearly just never had the roster to even remotely compete with it in any meaningful way. Certainly when it came to the pitching talent. And you do have, I think, 2 less brutally difficult series left in the schedule. Texas Tech this coming weekend. I guess that'd be your senior weekend, and then Baylor in Waco to close out the regular season. Probably a bit worse than that pretty brutal slate that you just got done with in Big 12 play. But I mean, I think the most optimistic thing you're hoping for here is maybe the Cougars can take one of the final 3 games they'll play at home this year. That's your best case scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the crazy part to me is just absolutely how everything we thought was going to happen this year has absolutely happened this year. we thought that we weren't going to be able to. We thought we were going to score a massive amount of runs and not stop anybody. And Sam, that's exactly what has happened this year. It's actually pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't have the stomach to go through every year's. I don't know what stats teams have available. Like, seems like it's a lot more work than I have the time for. But this might be the worst ever Big 12 ERA, like for softball ever, like that this team is doing. And like you said, it was easy to predict. You didn't have anyone close to a proven Big 12 pitcher. No offense personally to these young women, but like it was pretty clear to see for softball ignoramuses relative to people that, coach and really cover the sport that you and I are. If we could see it, why couldn't the people that know a lot more about it see it,
Yeah, absolutely. So very, very disappointing, but Sam,
shameless plug if you don't mind.
go ahead.
I wrote
Absolutely.
something last week.
Sorry.
Completely
Absolutely
free. I should have plugged at the top on our Patreon page, patreon.com/SH podcast, but don't have to be a member to read it or support it in any way. Wrote something about this current Cougar softball season concerning longer term trends with this program under current leadership. Like writing, don't have time to do it very often. And I'm also pretty self-conscious about whether I'm doing it well or not. So I appreciate the positive feedback I've gotten from you, Bobby, and several other people who took the time to write. I'm actually in the process of writing a thing about baseball that should be live on that very same site, free to read for everybody shortly as well. So watch.
Absolutely great piece of content from Sam there. If you care about Cougar non-football basketball kind of coverage and you care about every program and you are curious what's going on with softball and one coming up on baseball, I can't recommend it enough. I sat down to have breakfast at my local diner and got the notification that it got popped up, and I was like, all right, let's see who did this, or let's see what this is. And immediately I was just like, oh yeah, no, this is really good writing. So, and it was before I knew whether it was Dustin or Sam who wrote it. Either way, it was really good writing. So, yeah, great piece of writing. Highly recommend Cougar fans go check it out.
Thanks, bud. Gonna end this on another team that didn't have its best season, Cougar tennis. Now we'll jump in that, Bobby, if you don't mind.
Have at it, buddy.
Like I said, wish I had a happier note to end this episode and to end this team's season on. And kind of say I've personally in the last year or so gotten more into following tennis again, or back into tennis again, because I was I consider myself a fan of it at one time, and so I was excited to see if U of H could go from a team that was firmly in the middle of the AAC, outside of that conference's top tier, and maybe go out and not finish dead last in its first Big 12 season. Unfortunately, Cougar tennis has now finished its season, most recently losing their opening Big 12 tournament match against number 18 Oklahoma 4-0. We'll say, as they've done multiple times this season, Cougars really competed closer than maybe you would think against a real high-end opponent, at least on the double side of things. The pairing of Sonia Kovalenko and Sophie Skoten actually scored a dominant 6-2 win over the nation's number 20 ranked pairing, Rasheen Gilhaney and Dana Guzman. Blanca Cortia Pereno and Elantra Ncheva also took their OU opponents to a close 7-5 loss after trailing big early in that one, but unfortunately didn't really compete that well in the singles. Officially ended a season where the Cougars were 2-19 overall and 0-13 against Big 12 competition. And I think we just talked about it. The most frustrating thing for me following this team is you to have performances, mainly in the doubles, like the one I just talked about against opponents like OU, where you'd be like, wow, I really competed closer against an opponent I didn't expect much against. But then you'd have winnable matches like Cincy and Iowa State, and the Cougs really didn't take advantage of the few winnable games they had, or matches, they've had on their schedule. And more broadly, it's frustrating because I think tennis is a sport that if U of H decided to support it, or, let's say I win the lottery and spend my days podcasting and supporting U of H at a higher level than my current wealth allows, I think with not a crazy amount of backing, this program could become a more consistently successful program. I mean, it's a different sport, but we had a UH head coach come on this podcast, Bobby, Ryan Wakaburka, the former very successful swimming and diving head coach who's now at Auburn, a few years back. And he talked about how great being in Houston was for recruiting international athletes, which that program did a great positive effect, and I think still does under Tanika Jameson. And if anything, your prospective player pool for tennis is even more international than swim and dive. And, to evidence that, UH's current roster are all athletes from outside the U.S. And I think it would just take a relatively small amount of investment compared to what's required for like football or men's basketball to give U of H the tools to be very good in this sport. And more specifically, what's frustrating to me is U of H, you got to hear me kind of give you a preview of this, Bobby, when we talked about it before this episode. U of H athletics does not make it easy to support this specific program. Every other sport U of H offers, you go to the U of H official website, you go to the sports specific giving page, and you'll immediately get info about, you get usually 3 to 5 giving tiers, the dollar amounts that are required for those tiers, and generally what perks you would get for joining any one of those tiers. Team gear, signed merch, posters, etc., etc. Tennis is just a landing page with a brief description of the Center Court Club and the usual boilerplate language about how donations will provide direct financial support outside of the operating budget. No tiers for dollar amounts, no perks if you donate to the program or anything like that. If you want to donate, the website's link just takes you to the generic U of H giving page where you have to manually search and reselect the women's tennis program to make sure that's where your donation's going. And anything after that is just getting info and payment, nothing else specific to the program. I think you really do, when you're in the position the tennis program is in, you have to be creative when you're not one of the big 2 or 3 that's going to be on most fans' radar. Can I give you a modest idea, Bobby?
Hit me.
I mean, what about like having the highest tier of dollar support get an official UH tennis bag, or maybe even do a drawing for 1 or 2 supporters at lower financial amounts to also win one? I mean, speaking for myself as someone who plays a racket sport, the thought of having an official UH tennis bag to put my racket balls and stuff in would really, it'd be cool. It would raise my interest in becoming a program donor. That, every time I go out and play it, I would take my racket out of a U of H themed bag. I mean, I think you kind of get the drip with golf and golf accessories, and what that program does to kind of.
The golf tier is awesome. If you go to the women's golf one, if you're the top level, they give you like 3 custom UH stamped wedges, a 9-hole playing lesson with Coach Gum. It's really cool. If I had the money to do it, I absolutely would.
Yeah, and I'm positive I'm not the only UH fan or alum out there who plays tennis or another similar racket sport recreationally who would be positively incentivized by that kind of giveaway. Maybe have one, like you just mentioned, maybe have 1 or 2 of your donors above a certain tier eligible to win a 1-hour lesson with one of the coaches during like the offseason or the recruiting dead periods. I know it's a little bit more work for your staff, but we're not talking about that much in the grand scheme of things. And if it drives more giving to a program that needs it, I don't think anyone would argue it's anything other than net good. Or just give your possible fans or donors some specific of what, say a $500 donation in a year would do for the program. Are you getting better meals, equipment upgrades, more inventory, any of that stuff? In a smaller, more individualized sport, those kinds of dollar donations may just be like a small drop in the bucket for a larger program. It's got to go a lot further with tennis. I mean, these are just ideas I came up with on my lunch break yesterday while I was finishing my episode notes. I wish the people in UH athletics or in the tennis program whose job it is to try to drive more revenue into an overlooked program would put more obvious effort into getting fans aware of their team's existence and considering donating their discretionary income. Because without concerted action like that, or I don't know, Chris Pesman waking up one day and deciding to give a shit about a UH sport that isn't football, I mean, we're doomed, Bobby.
Or basketball, or men's basketball.
That's just an added bonus of one of his predecessors hiring Kelvin Sampson. I'm not giving the guy credit for that. Anyway, we're gonna be doomed without any concerted action to keep doing this podcast year in, year out and talk occasionally about a program that just isn't at all competitive in the Big 12. And that sucks. I don't want that to be the case. And I don't think a large amount of dollars could make that happen, but that's where we are right now, Bobby. And I wish I had a happier note to end us on, but
yeah, I mean, to your point, I went to the tennis match, what was that, a month ago now? Versus
TCU, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like 3-4 weeks ago, probably. And I pulled in, and again, this is a road. I didn't expect U of H to be rolling deep or anything like that. But I pull up, and women's golf just got a new Sprinter van. Most golf teams travel with Sprinter vans. I think I've sent you the picture of the North Texas one when I was driving home from Houston one time. That's just kind of how they travel. Tennis teams, I learned that day, are the same way, right? Because there were other schools there. I pull up, I park next to one, and I happen to be parked next to the U of H one. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I look at the sticker, and I know it's not a big deal. I know it's not a huge deal. But the sticker looks as bad as the one that's been on the back of my car for 5 years when I bought it. It's faded, it was cracked and peeling and doing all this stuff, and it's like, that just is the perfect like metaphor and symbol for this program. We can't even get them a nice sticker. Like, I know it's not a lot. I know that doesn't help you win matches. It doesn't help you do anything else, but it just shows like a complete lack of anything. And I remember texting you and Dustin and like, look at this sticker. This is ridiculous. This is borderline shameful. I couldn't imagine another program rolling out with their sticker peeling like that. And like, I'd pay for the sticker. Like, if I knew how much it was, if it was a reasonable amount of money, I feel like I'd be like, it's $150. Fine. I'll pay the $150. Imagine recruiting, right? And you go to pick up a recruit, an international recruit, because to your point, you're probably picking up an international recruit in that Sprinter van. And you roll up to IAH and you tell them to come to the van, and they roll up and it's this dirty, dingy, peeling sticker on a Sprinter van that, what are we doing? Like, I'm not asking you to throw millions at the tennis program. I understand it's economics, right? But we can get them something decent. We can get them a little bit nicer something. And to your point, if we could just donate easily, it could make a difference. $500 to the tennis program probably goes a lot longer of a way than it does for the basketball program, right? Than the football program. It just does.
Yeah, I think it's, again, responsibility of the leadership of the program. Like, your job isn't solely coaching the sport; it's being the public face and fundraising, all that stuff. And it's I think pretty clear from the little digging I did that it's not easy to do it for a program that probably needs it more than any on campus. So, want to end it on that happy note, Bobby?
I guess so, bud.
All right. Patreon.com/shpodcast, shpodcast@gmail.com. Support our friends at Charlie Hustle by ordering some sweet Cougar merch and using our promo code PAWD15, podcast.bsky.social. It's an obligatory mention that I have to mention here at the end. I think I hit all the important stuff, Bobby. So what do we always say at the end here?
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Vamos los Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.